Good afternoon, everyone. I am Deidre Melton, the president of ISACA Tallahassee, and I'm so glad to see everyone come out today. I hope you're enjoying the food. It's a change up from our usual sandwiches. And for that, we have Checkpoint to thank. So I'm gonna let Checkpoint come up and let you guys know a little bit about their company.
Hello everyone, my name is Bill Banks. I'm a checkpoint security engineer for North Florida. I'm based here in Tallahassee. I've been with Checkpoint about 4 years, but before that I spent 15 years in state and local government. Worked for the state for 10 and the city of Tallahassee for 5. Just a little bit about Checkpoint. We're the largest pure play security vendor in the world. Some of you may be familiar with our firewalls, but we're much more than just a firewall company. We offer solutions for endpoints, mobile devices, very advanced threat prevention or protection for SaaS offerings like Office 365. So when you have any security projects you're working on, please don't hesitate to reach out. We're going to be talking about network assessments and security assessments. One of the things that we do offer is a free security checkup. If you're interested in talking about that, please let me know. Appreciate it.
All right, thank you, Bill. I don't have a lot of announcements today for a change because we decided to create a wheel that you can look at most of them as we're doing the networking. However, two things that's not up there that I wanted to talk about is ISACA, for those who are not members, this month as well as next month, ISACA is having a half-off membership. So if you've been wanting to become a member, you can join for half off these next 2 months and you'll be a full member until December. So I wanted to let you guys know about that, as well as some job opportunities. I know a couple of months back we announced that Flowers in Thomasville were looking for an IT auditor, senior IT auditor. They are still looking for a senior IT auditor. They really need one ASAP, so they are raising the base pay to $100 grand. So if you're looking for new opportunities and willing to drive to Thomasville, they're willing to pay up to $100,000 base plus 10% annual bonus. Putting it out there. Send me an email and I can get you in contact with the recruiter. Yes.
I'm currently doing a project at Flowers, so like a little bit of inside scoop of what's going on.
So their recruiter called me about this last week, and so I told him I'd make sure I announced it to everyone. Are there any other announcements that anyone wants to make? Any other organizations, anything coming up, or any other openings at your job that you'd like to announce? Okay, if not, I'm going to turn it over to Aline, the one with prizes and gifts for everyone.
No, I love my job. This is fun. So, as a lot of you know, we've been doing a raffle for our upcoming cybersecurity event in August. So, high level, we are having a very large cybersecurity event. You'll see the slide flash up. And so what we did was for everyone that attended the March, April, May learning events, and also our NIST and CSX workshops, you were given points assigned based on the amount of days that those events were. Also, if you were liking and posting and sharing our social media posts on LinkedIn, we would also give you points as well. So we have tallied those up and have the winners. Now, Ralph technically would have won. He got 13 points with all of his social media posts, but board members are excluded. So, but just had to recognize Ralph and his attendance and his social media posts. But our first place winner ended up being Dan. So Dan attended the March, April, and the NIST workshops, plus he had the most social media posts for our our members. So Dan, you win the first prize. So what that is free admission to the chats. So if you haven't already registered, just use this code down here. If you have, you can see me afterwards.
Okay.
And then you also get a prize pack.
Thank you.
So congratulations to Dan, first prize.
What's the most prize tags?
Oh, okay, so I'll show everybody. You have this nice Bounds ISACA Tallahassee branded notebook. We also have our ISACA cups, lapel pins, a cool luggage tag for the travelers in here, and then one of our CSX screen wipes. So lots of good stuff in there. Now we did have a tie for second place. Daniel Pierce and Mayor Masai. Daniel had the March Learning Event, CSX, and NIST, but Mayor had March, April, May, NIST, and but no social media posts for either one. So if you would both come up, Daniel Pierce and Mayor, to get your certificates. So because we had a tie for second, what we did is you both get half off of the registration for CATS instead of the 50 and 25. So I need Mayor around. Daniel is not here, but we have Mayor. Congratulations. All right, and let us know if you have any. Here's the registration code for that one. Perfect. Okay. Thank you. All right, and then we did have 3 runners up, and those get our ISACA prize packs. So we have Daniel Arlotto. Oh, Marcia May. Okay. And these you did not have to be present for because it was a big tally. And then Dennis Cook. All right, so we'll get in touch with those winners. But thank you all. We're excited that you have been attending and joining. And each, we'll continue to do raffles throughout the learning events. This was just the one for CATS. So thank you. Next, I'll bring up Ralph Page, who actually helped organize this event, does a lot of our programming and spearheads all of that. Ralph?
Thank you, Deidre. Like Deidre said, I'm Ralph Page, the program chairman, and I put together all the upcoming events, but truthfully, I'm just following the footsteps of our past president, Jim Maxwell, who has done a great job and has really kind of built up the educational sessions. I'm just trying to keep the momentum going. So help me out, make sure you come. I see we got a good crowd here today. So coming up after today, we're going to do the easy networking with Carroll here today, and he's going to give us a great presentation and give us a lot of practical advice. Next month, we're going to have Kevin Patton from SAS, and he's going to come in and talk to us about big data and big analysis. That ought to be a very good educational session as well. And then in August, you heard we're doing CAT, so definitely make sure you get out there and sign up today and get, because the early bird is coming to a close fairly shortly. So there's your warning. So I'd like to introduce our speaker. Oh, and make sure you go out and follow us on LinkedIn, like us on Twitter, Facebook, we're out there. So definitely make sure you get hooked into us socially. We put information out there, both from the national and the chapter, on those social websites. Today we have Nicholas Carroll. He's with FBMC, I'm sorry, and Fringe Benefits Management Company. And he's has a lot of experience within the security realm. He's a network security specialist, and his career has focused on overseeing HIPAA compliance, technical controls, and all facets of IT infrastructure. He's worked as a cybersecurity instructor at PCC, and he has a passion for spreading knowledge about IT, and he's currently working on the board for BSIDE. BSIDE exercise is coming up in October, I believe, right? October 13th. October, yes, there you go, October 13th, very good. And so that's a good thing. It's out on bsidesdlh.org if you guys want to find it out on the web. And he also holds many industry certifications, including Microsoft Systems Engineer, CCNA, CEA, CWSP. You'll have to ask him what all those mean. It's very good. And he's working toward the CISM, so definitely, hopefully we'll have a CISM course next year, so look forward to that. So anyway, today's topic is going to be focusing on simple open source tools and regular script. Nicholas?
Hey everybody, how's it going? I'm glad I got this week because they brought out Sunnies just for me, you know, that was...
Oh, yeah.
All right. So, I'm gonna go fairly quickly here on this topic, just because there's a lot of slides and I did not time myself when I put this together, so I may have put too many things in here. What we're talking about is the idea of continuous audit, right? So FISMA has regulated that we should be pushing more towards continuous monitoring, okay? Less check the box compliance and more actual practical and hands-on putting things together. They have changed this again in 2014 to kind of re-emphasize that idea that you should be automating as much as possible. It's now in the language in FISMA that the government should be working to audit their security practices as much as possible, right? So we should be trying to follow suit with that. If the government's doing it, if it's what FISMA recommends, you know, a lot of organizations say that they're following NIST standards. NIST 837 is designed and based on FISMA, okay? So if you're following NIST, you're technically following FISMA. So we want to get beyond the idea of auditing every now and then. We want to make sure that our monitoring controls are continuously running, right? And we want to make those things just a continuous daily part of our lives. Most organizations that I know, when they're doing audit stuff, you know, it's a quarterly checkup, right? Maybe it's an annual thing. It's a big deal. As well, an audit should be. An audit should be very involved and very hardcore. But when an outside auditing organization comes to you and they're asking for a report, you shouldn't wait to just generate that report then. You should be gathering those things throughout the year and keeping an eye on them to make sure that you're having a clean, healthy audit every time, okay? So I feel like most of us probably have SIEMs in place. Most of us probably have a lot of these tools in place. If you don't, today's for you, all right? We're going to talk a little bit about some open source tools you could be using, as well as we're going to go through some scripting stuff. When Joe presented, Joe was like, what, 4 or 5 months ago that he talked? He asked in his talk, who's using PowerShell and Python in their organizations for part of their network security items and their automation. And there just weren't enough hands up at that time. So we're going to go through a few of those basics today on how to set that up and use it, and some ideas that you can use for it too, okay? So first things first, if you're getting into this and you're new to the idea of doing continuous monitoring or continuous auditing of any kind, you want to start with a framework, okay? And you can lay out your own framework. You can hijack NISTs, whatever you want to go with. Just keep it simple, all right? I like simple stuff personally. The simpler it is, the easier it is, the more likely we'll actually follow it and stick with it. So lay out a framework, right? Keep it as simple as possible. Set your scope. Step 1. Which items do you want to monitor regularly? Do we care about our website that's hosted on GoDaddy? Do we want metrics from that or not? Do we only want to monitor our internal IP addresses? Set that scope, kind of get that idea together, because that's going to help you build out what you're sitting here, okay? Define what threats exist for you. Do you care about hurricanes? All right? Do you care if somebody walks out the door with everything on a flash drive? All right? Decide what you want to be monitoring for and checking for. And once you've kind of got those ideas, prioritize them, all right? Take the risks to your organization and lay them out. You know, this is our biggest thing, this is our lowest thing, right? we are most concerned with insider threat, so we are going to make sure we block all USB access in our environment. We are not really concerned about hurricanes because our data center lives in Denver, right? We'll lay things out and kind of decide. Once you have your risks down, run a nice little gap analysis. There's a ton of little tools out there that'll help you build out that framework. Get an idea of what you're missing in your environment. Run a vulnerability scan against your organization. Figure out what you have, what you don't have, what's patched, what's not. And then from there, start working on automating your responses, okay? Step 5, automation. Automation is key for all of this stuff. If you're dealing with, your incident response team, right? Make them some run books, make them playbooks, give them the steps to follow. Don't just trust that they're gonna know exactly what to do right out of the gate, especially if you've got a bunch of younger guys that are just coming into it, right? Give them the ideas and tell them where everything lives in your environment. The more we automate, the less we have to deal with on a day-to-day basis, and the less our burden is when we're pulling these things together, okay? So automation kind of becomes our key. Now, you can definitely pay for some really nice tools. Awesome. If you've got the budget for it, go hog wild, please. If you don't have the budget, you can grow your own. Takes a little bit more upfront cost from you. There's a bit of that administrative cost, right? But it pays out if you put in the work, okay? So we're gonna take a high-level look at some of these things. I've got a GitHub that I started with the scripts that I'm showing you today at github.com/continuousaudit/ISACA. You can pop online there. All of the scripts are there, so you don't even have to write these things. And to be honest, just because of the idea of making this easy, when you want something and you think, man, I wish we were monitoring, our email servers to see if they're on any blacklists. There's a PowerShell script that's already been written for that. Almost anything you think of, you don't have to write yourself. It's almost all out there for you already. All you gotta do is tweak a couple things or just change a couple variables, and they'll give you the instructions on it, right? If you're in a primarily Windows environment, you should be getting familiar with PowerShell if you're not already using it. Microsoft is really coming down our throats with this one. They're all about PowerShell now, okay? There are certain tasks in your Windows environment that can only be done by PowerShell, and the more we get into Server 2016, the more stuff they push into PowerShell. But that's good. They've made it really easy to use. You can generate alerts from it, make CSVs for easy Excel reports, whatever you want. Things you want to find, you can run a PowerShell script in your environment, pull it out, and go. If you're new to PowerShell and you kind of want to get an idea of more that you can do with it or see some of the stuff that's pre-written, I highly recommend gallery.technet.microsoft.com. If you pop out there, they've got just thousands and thousands of scripts. Anything you could possibly think of, it's probably written for you. They also have a blog that they run, Hey Scripting Guy. They bring in different scripting guys, and they have a guy that's normally on it, and he brings in guests. Where if you're having trouble with a script or you want something custom spun, you can literally ask him, and Microsoft's scripting guy will help write it for you or help you walk through what you're missing. It works out really well. He's actually very cooperative. It's a great community there in the TechNet and everything like that for this stuff, okay? So, let's look at something really simple, all right? PowerShell, let's say we need to find out all of the group policy objects in our environment, and we want to pull that report out, right? I can go to my domain controllers, and I can open Group Policy Editor, and I can grab everything out, or I can run a nice little script. Like I said, I've got it linked up there. We'll open up PowerShell, we'll start a new script, just copy and paste it, and click the play button. That's all you really have to do here. And when you press that play button, that PowerShell script, which is just 4 lines of code, is going to generate you a nice HTML report in CTemp with everything that you need to go look at, okay? So it's very simple. Like I said, you didn't even have to write it. Someone already wrote it for you. Just copy, paste, run, and you've got it. So we can start taking these ideas and building on it, okay? So this was a simple code. Maybe I set this to run automatically in Task Manager or Task Scheduler, right? Maybe I want to get this run once a week just so I can keep track of changes to group policy in my environment. Maybe I want to complicate it a little bit more and actually pull a report that tells me what exact changes were there. Those scripts all exist, and they're very easy to use. We'll look at another example, kind of step it up a little bit here. Yes? PowerShell is built into all Windows environments. Windows 7 up, they've all got it. There are a few catches with PowerShell on that. Depending on which version of Windows you're using, it'll tell you which version of PowerShell you have. So sometimes you'll go to pull a really fancy looking script, and you'll look, and it'll be like, well, this only works in Server 2012 and Windows 8. No, but I want to run it in Server 2000, right? Well, that means that it only runs in PowerShell version, X, and you have PowerShell version Y. But it will tell you on TechNet exactly which version of Windows it works with, which has been tested with, so you can use it that way. You don't necessarily need to run it as an admin, but the caveat there is it depends on what kind of information you're trying to pull. Okay? So reading that group policy object, I don't believe you need admin access to just read it and pull the report. But if you wanted to use the group policy PowerShell scripts to make any kind of changes, then yes, you're going to have to run that as an admin. Most antivirus solutions allow PowerShell in an environment. Some places do not allow PowerShell. That just depends on your security posture. But it is built in by default, and you can go good. In Windows, just pull up PowerShell.exe. I would highly recommend, actually, if you're getting into using it, there's a tool on your Windows machine called PowerShell ISE, and that is the scripting engine. The interactive scripting engine is what it stands for. And that is the one, like I showed you here, where you get the nice little text editor at the top, right? So when you start it up, there'll be a nice little text editor at the top, and then at the bottom, there will be the actual command window. And you can actually watch the command run, and it will help you kind of error check things there. You can run it in real time. You can just run the PowerShell, kind of a bash style window if you want to just run PowerShell.exe, but I would highly recommend, if you're new to this and you're just getting into it, use PowerShell, the interactive scripting engine. It gives you a little bit easier walkthrough of what to do. Does that got it?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. I clicked the thing, right? Yeah, I clicked the thing. All right, there we go. So here's one that you would need to set up as an admin. Like I said, the other one you could run and you could pull the report, right? That's just a read action. You're not editing anything. I set this one up. Dennis, this one should look familiar to you because this one's been running in the College of Med. I don't know if you got these or not. Yeah, so this one runs at the College of Med. I have this one set up, and what this does is anytime an account locks out in your environment, maybe you're monitoring that with SolarWinds or some fancy tool, but you don't. You can monitor it with just PowerShell. And PowerShell will email you a nice little report. In your email, you'll get this, right? It'll tell you who locked out, where, what time. That's handy. You can send that straight to your help desk team and let them start diagnosing that stuff. Or we can gather that information to get an idea of, hey, Susie Q keeps locking out every 5 minutes. What's up with Susie Q, right? Or we can get that emailed right to us. The downside of this one, like I said, you do have to run it as an admin because it will need to be running from one of your DCs. Okay? So you'll take the scripts, which I've got on the next slide, or you can just go download it, copy it, make a couple of tweaks. Set up in Task Scheduler on your DC to monitor for event 4740. That's the event code for a lockout. Anytime Task Scheduler trips on that, it'll pull this report out of that event and send it right to you. Okay? On the script, on here, just at the bottom, you do need to change a few things down here just to make sure it will work in your environment, okay? Down at the bottom here, you've got a variable called smtp.yoursmtp server. Don't leave it as smtp.yoursmtp server, because I'm assuming that that's not the name of your mail server, right? Rename it to whatever mail server you're using. And then you also probably want to change the from and to addresses down there, however you want to change them to your liking. You can actually get this thing delivered. So I've got another one here. This one's complement of lazy Windows admins. The lazy Win admin is the blog that does a lot of this stuff too. They're great for these kinds of things. Like I said, you don't have to write this stuff most of the time. This super long string right here is what you would paste into your task scheduler, right? When you create your alert. And what this one's going to do then with the script and this task schedule alert here is it's going to tell you anytime you have a group membership change in your environment. This one has been particularly modified. If you look here, -group, domain admins, enterprise admins, okay? So it's only going to tell you if there's a change to your domain admins or your enterprise admins. You can modify that. If you've got some privileged group that you care about monitoring, throw it in there. See, I've got one called example group. Let's replace that, right? Change that out. Email from, obviously, should be your email. Email to, where you want it to go. And then at the end there, that little email server, again, just change it to your email server, all right? You set that to run in Task Scheduler. You download the script, and you're good to go. Now, this one you will need to install, okay? And when you install it, you're just going to go on wherever you want it to run from, maybe a DC, maybe a special server, and you're going to install it real quick. In PowerShell, you'd open up PowerShell.exe or PowerShell-ISE, and you copy and paste this right here, install script, and you're going to install that script you downloaded. Okay? Once it's installed, when Task Scheduler runs, it will call it. All right? That's all you really need to do. And the output kind of looks like this. So, obviously, like I said, that nice long thing copied there. But you get this emailed report, as well as it will create a CSV on the server that you can go and call. You can use for anything, all right? So we can see when our membership changes have happened. And we get that change history. That's the other nice thing about this script is that in that CSV that it is chronicling everything in, it keeps the change history for you. So you can actually watch this stuff over time. And that cost you nothing, all right? So if your budget isn't there for Splunk or something fancy, you can still do it just with the built-in tools. Another part that we should be focusing on when we're talking about doing continuous monitoring, continuous auditing, is those vulnerability scans. So like in step 4 where I said kind of find out what gaps are in your environment, you want to run a vulnerability scan, right? You want to figure out where things are at. Maybe you've got the budget for a proper tool. Great, you've got a couple grand plus each year for Nessus or Nexpose or whoever you got a license for. You should absolutely be using them. You should try to use them with credentialed scans if you can in your environment. Traffic scans are going to give you very good results for what's actually wrong. But at a minimum, just run something. I mean, there's never a point in security where something isn't better than nothing, right? What was it? We had that big the issue with PGP recently, where they broke PGP encryption on email, and some people were saying, well, just don't use PGP at all. Like, no, don't tell people not to use it. It's still better than nothing, even if it's broken, right? Because it's still something in the way of an attacker. Scanning with anything is better than nothing, right? So in this case, I'm just going to show you real quick a couple screens. Not going to go through fully how to set this thing up, because there's a gazillion great write-ups online for setting this up. How many of you have ever used OpenVOS as a scanner? Yep. Yeah, so that's what we're going to mention real quick. OpenVOS is a fork from Nessus before Nessus went private. So it's built on that same back end. They've got most of the same database at this point, although Nessus has gotten way better now that they're under the guise of a commercial project. For setting this up, I would recommend set it up on a little VM in your environment so you can run the scans, but maybe an old desktop, whatever you've got lying around, connected toaster, whatever. If it will run Linux, you can do this, okay? So, go and download OpenVAS, free download, and you want to make sure you set up scheduled scans. You want to know how things are doing over time in our environment, right? There is a note with OpenVAS. If you go download the Easy Setup VM that they have a community edition VM that you can just download and stand up today. Greenbone is the company that currently maintains it, and they maintain that VM for you. However, they would like you to pay for their better version, obviously, because that's, you know, what everybody exists to have is their jobs is to get paid. If you're not paying for it and you're using their Easy VM, they lock away the ability to turn on scheduled scanning. So you have to manually go in and fire it off every now and then. That's not easy, right? I want something that just runs once a week, okay? Well, that means that I have to put a little bit more effort in up front. Like I said, I'm not going to show you exactly how to set up Linux and OpenVAS, because that would take a little bit more time than we have if we're going to keep this thing down under about 45-ish minutes. But you can pop on any of these links for Red Hat or Debian, and they will walk you through it. I highly recommend this middle one right here if you're doing Debian. Udara.com has a really thorough walkthrough for setting it up. It really shouldn't take you any time at all. But here's what you get once you've got that going in your environment. All right. You can get these alerts and these reports on a schedule, and you can get them emailed to you, okay? So you can be tracking the health of your environment as you go. Let's go, kind of give you guys an idea there. Yeah. And you can pull up a little bit more detail on each of the things that it finds. It will rate them based on how severe the CVE that it finds is. And again, it's entirely free if you're using the one that you spin yourself. And just as a note, once you set up that one, the ability to schedule it is right there when you're creating a new task. Right? Real simple, just check the box and go. Shouldn't take you much time at all. So what about, this is going to scan you from inside, right? What about scanning from the outside? Knowing what the internet sees for our organization. Well, we can automate that a little bit too, all right? And we can automate that, again, for basically free or very cheap. Is anybody using SHODAN? One hand. Has anybody, so has anyone been on SHODAN before? All right, good. Yeah, there we go, a few more hands, yeah. This is a great way to know what the internet sees about your organization. If you're not using it, I highly recommend you go set up an account and start using it. And you don't need an account to start searching. You could pop right in there to that search bar right now, shodan.io, type in your organization and go. And you're going to find out what's out there and what you're leaking to the world. All right? We had, there was a big Cisco vulnerability recently where they had remote code execution on switches. I went in here and checked. And in Tallahassee, there were a bunch of organizations that had that Cisco port open, and it was the exact port, and it was actually flagged with the right banner. So using Shodan, I was able to check the port, check for our area, see who had it open, and then send those reports to those organizations to say, hey, maybe don't expose this one right now, right? We can automate that with Python and the Shodan API, all right? We can automate these searches. So in Shodan, once you've run a search or you've got an idea, you know, you make your account, you can go in here and you're going to get an API, okay? And you're going to need that API because when you search against them with Python, it's going to tell you, you know, where's your improper API or where's your API key, right? If you don't have an API key, you need to get one. So you've got an API key, you've got an idea of what you want to search for against your organization. Okay? Maybe you just want to search your name or your website or whatever, and you want to regularly have it run. We're going to install Python on Windows so that we can go ahead and get this going. Anybody used Python before? A little bit? All right. Python is a real easy programming language, very common in scripting. If you do a lot more Linux work, or you've got some admins that do a lot of Linux work, they probably know quite a bit about it. But it's very simple to set up on Windows, okay? You can go out and get it. I've actually got Python 2.7 on the GitHub for you. And the reason that 2.7 is there is because right now the SHODAN library is compatible with Python 2.7. So you want to make sure you're using the right version of Python. So just go get that one, okay? So download it, install it. It's going to install on your computer. You'll get a nice little folder at C Python 27 when it installs. That's the base default, all right? So we'll open up command prompt and navigate there. So just cd Python 27, all right? Here's on mine. There we go, we've got that. The other thing I would recommend, you can do this a couple different ways, but I use pip for my installs because I think it's easier. And again, pip is out there on the GitHub. So you're just going to download it, copy it to your Python directory, and run python get pip.py. So we change directories, we run python get pip.py. That's going to install pip for us. All right, pip allows us to easily install packages. All right. So once we've got pip installed, come on. There we go. We're going to install SHODAN, their library that they give us. Okay? So we're going to cd up one folder level to scripts, and we're just going to type pip install SHODAN. That's all you need to type. So go navigate up one, pip install SHODAN. You'll get this when you do that. It'll look like, you know, every bad hacker movie screen ever as it goes through the command prompt. Just wait a minute, let it run. All right. When it gets done, oops. How did that slide get funky? Come on, there we go. Once it gets done installing SHODAN, you can go ahead and start using it. And it's very easy to use, okay? So we've got Python installed, we've got pip installed. We're going to use, we've got SHODAN installed, we've got all the stuff we need. So now we're going to write our script. I would highly recommend, you open your text editor of choice, or just copy and paste what I give you in the GitHub. I would highly recommend not using Notepad for writing this stuff, even though I have Notepad as the picture up here as the example. Python doesn't like certain pieces of formatting. So when you notice that I've got spaces, it's technically not a tab. It's 4 spaces, so spacebar 4 times in Notepad. Or use a better text editor like Atom, and it will just do it for you. All right? So in the script, we're allowed to search by different filters of SHODAN, okay? You can do country, city, host name, net, which will give you your IP addresses, OS for operating system, whatever you would like to hammer down and find, okay? And you can combine those filters in all kinds of different ways to monitor what you want to monitor. The sample script that's out there on the GitHub right now watches or searches for Windows XP boxes in Tallahassee with RDP open. So if you go and you copy this and you just run it, then that's what you're going to find. It's going to output you a nice little CSV with that. There are none, fortunately, that show up. So you should get 0 if you actually run it. However, if you modify that script and delete the port, then all you look for is Windows XP machines in Tallahassee. You're going to find like 34 that are connected to the internet right now. A third which are part of Network Tallahassee Incorporated, a third that are under the Florida Supreme Court system, and a third that are just under different organizations. So you can go out there and search or check and see what you've got, okay? So now you've got the script down, you've put your API key here, and that's the only thing you really need to edit, unless you want to edit the search right here, which is API.search. This is where your filters are. And those filters that I listed, there's 3 on there when you actually download that script. Okay? Modify those. Other than that, you don't really need to change anything. It's just going to output that as a nice CSV for you. It'll pull the IP addresses for you right now, and you can edit that if you want, okay? now that you've got it, yes.
So, Nicholas, you said you would send some information to some of the companies that you have. What kind of response did you get back from that? I mean,
So there have been a few. Honestly, it depends on how you're handling your disclosure to the company, right? I have a few friends who find stuff and disclose stuff, and they're kind of jerky about it. You know, I prefer I'm just going to try to find a guy who looks like he's from the IT department on LinkedIn and low-key send him a message like, hey, here's the report that I found, you guys should check this. And it usually winds up with another LinkedIn connection and somebody sending me a back message saying, oh, thanks, that was a good find, we've taken care of that. Or, oh, thanks, we'll look into it. Sometimes you get ghosted. There was one where I found, for that same Cisco one, there was a telecom company out in the Southwest who had like 1,000 of Cisco switches connected to the internet, all with that exploit open. And I messaged a couple of their lead guys, and I saw the alert saying that they checked my LinkedIn profile, and then they just ghosted. And I was like, okay, well, hopefully you guys paid attention at least and tried to close it up. But I went back and searched like 2 weeks later, and they were still out there, so I guess they decided that that was an acceptable risk for them. I don't know, you decide in your organization. But yeah, I mean, as long as you're handling things you find well and you're kind of low-key, just slipping it to a couple people, you know, from behind, usually people are really receptive. I know a few people that I've seen that are friends of mine that have called people out publicly on social media about stuff. It's like that's just kind of being a jerk. You catch more flies with honey than vinegar, right? Like, don't be a jerk about it. We all have things that go wrong, and we all make mistakes. I'm sure if you check my organization right now, you'd find 1,000 things that I would be embarrassed about, you know? But I would rather if somebody came to me and was like, hey, maybe don't do this one. Like, ah, cool, got it, thanks. Then, you know, call me out on it. But I still want to know, at least. So, all right. So once you've got the script downloaded, installed, you've kind of identified the couple of little variables that you want to watch for your environment. Because we've got a Python installed, and because we have it as a script that we can just copy and run, we can run it again in Task Scheduler in Windows from any Windows box we want to run it from, right? In Task Scheduler, and I will make a note here, if you're really getting into this, there are, just Google real quick, setting your environment variables for Python in Windows, so you don't have to call the entire string every time. You can just type Python, and Windows will be like, I know what Python is. If you're going to use this as a one-off test, just do this real quick. Copy and paste it. All right. So all you're going to do is put python.exe, so C Python 27 python.exe, because we haven't set our environment variable. And then we're going to tell it, after that, in quotation marks, what script file to run. We're just going to tell it where the script is run, right? And we're going to set whatever schedule we want. I set it once a week. Set it every day, however often you want to search Shodan. I've never hit the rate limit on their API. I know that there is one, but I mean, if you're running, you know, 20 searches a day or something like that, you're not going to hit it. You're not going to max it out. And if you were, you know, like trying to continuously query them like every second, they're probably going to block you. So yeah, once we've got that, we can automate it with Task Scheduler. It'll run. We can get a nice little report out of it and see for our CSV what IP addresses we've exposed or whatever we want to get out there, right? So we're gathering all of this information now. We've built a few custom alerts for our environment. How do we keep track of it all? Where are we storing all of this information? How are we making it into nice reports that are easily actionable so that, you know, when we do our regular monitoring, our regular auditing, we can hand them off to an admin and be like, hey, we need to fix this one, or we need to fix that one, or hey, look at this one with me for real quick, right? Obviously, a lot of organizations, like I mentioned, Splunk earlier, things like that, you guys can use a lot of those nice SIEM tools for those kind of stuff. If your budget is nil, don't worry. There are a few good options for you, okay? Keeping track of everything, I highly recommend you look at something based on, like, are you guys familiar with ELK, Elasticsearch, Logstash, and Kibana? Those are open source projects that are combined together to make a nice SIEM that you can modify yourself. There are a couple easy to use VMs you can download. Graylog is is a pretty good one. I've used Graylog before in a few environments. It's really easy to stand up. You can download their VM right out of the gate, just turn it on and go, and it'll start letting you run things and build your own alerts with it. They actually allow you to do some custom dashboards in there real easy. Like you can monitor all of your environment's network connections with geolocating the IPs right in the thing. It'll give you a nice little like map of the world for where all your connections are coming from. So you can see how many times Russia has tried to send you a message, right? You pull all that together. There's another very good project called the Hive. The Hive is what I'm going to show you a couple slides of here. I highly recommend looking at setting up the Hive in your environment for more of this style of work, either audit or incident response work, because that's more of what it's designed to do. It's actually got some nice collaborative dashboards and tracking dashboards where you can work together as a team on these kinds of things. Okay? So, the Hive, like I said, you know, it's a nice tracking dashboard. I mean, even project management style stuff is in there, as well as you can filter alerts and searchable things into it. Anything you write that you can output an alert to, or a text file to, or whatever, you can ingest it into one of these tools. And then it all becomes conveniently searchable for you. So you don't have to go out and track down every single place where you've stored a file on a server, or you've stored anything like that. And you can just kind of have it all put in one central repository for yourself, right? Like I said, that's the Hive there. Come on. Yeah. The Hive also has a lot of different tools that are built into itself and what you can do with it. So you can see you can build cases out in it and all that jazz. Freely available open source tool. If you've got nothing in your environment, go give it a try. Okay? And that is all I really have for that. If you would like me to actually show you anything of these in work, or actually run through it together real quick, we can. Other than that, I'm all set. Dennis.
Can the Hive kick off runbooks or scripts?
The Hive can kick off scripts from alerts.
Okay.
I don't know about full runbooks though. What are you trying to tie it into? Would be the question.
Just in general, I'm wondering if they can act proactively, be programmed to respond rather than just attack.
You can set it to do alerting, and then on those alerts, you can do different scripts and things. So you can do some reactive work with it.
And the second question I have, a lot of organizations have inherent bias against open source. And can you show us any strategies you may have found over time that helped you overcome that?
So, okay, we're now the open source versus closed source debate that everybody has waged everywhere. And if you go on LinkedIn right now and you type open source versus closed source, you're going to find 5,000 plus posts with everybody's got their own opinion on it. The answer to that really is there is no right answer. You have to decide in your organization what's best. I mean, closed source projects, the idea, of course, is that a closed source project, because it is controlled by a vendor, they are controlling security from start to finish, right? That's a good thing from a security standpoint. But how many times have we seen different security organizations get compromised? How many times has malware made it into Windows Update with Microsoft certificates, right? So just because it's closed source, even though it is technically supposed to be monitored and more secure, doesn't inherently make it more secure, right? All of that is based on how good the vendor is and how good the project is. Open source, you hear all the open source advocates say, oh, well, open source is more secure because there's many eyes on it. Everybody can look at it, everybody can get an idea. I can't audit Oracle, but I can audit Graylog, and I can look at all the source code, and I can see exactly what's in there, and I can decide whether or not that is secure for me in my environment. Really, who does that? I mean, who has the time to dig through an open source project from start to finish and all their code and decide, yes, this is secure for me or not? It's just kind of an arduous task. And if you say that at the point where I'm dedicating a programmer and an admin to dig through all that source code, maybe I should have just paid money for the closed source utility. It just depends on how much risk you're willing to accept in your organization and where you're going to go with it, what you're trying to do. I mean, a lot of the stuff I talk about is open source because most of the places where I interact with or I've seen, the budget is very limited, or the manpower is very limited. Like it's one guy, and he's got to do 5 things, and they cut his budget 20% this year. In those cases, you just have to say, look, we need these things, we have to accept these risks if we will. You know, in an organization where you have the budget available, maybe it's better. I mean, the only support you're going to get with something like that script is if you hit me up on LinkedIn and like, hey Nick, I tried this and it did this error, and you have to wait 3 days for me to go, oh wait, I got a LinkedIn message, let me respond back. That's the other thing with the open source. Like a lot of these guys are, you know, guys who are just working on this stuff in their free time. Maybe they don't have time to check on it as all. So you have to decide there. It is interesting though that open source is growing. A lot of closed source programmers, especially closed source programmers who are part of larger organizations like Amazon and Microsoft, are contributing to these open source projects on the side because to them it's a way to kind of grow their skills and grow their portfolio. So you kind of wind up getting, you know, some better programming in front of them, but you want to watch for larger projects that have attracted that kind of interest, not just anything that kind of. But I mean, the answer I have for that is it's going to depend on your organization. You're going to decide you're going to fight that battle or not. Appreciate it. Anybody else? Yes. Most of what we've talked about today, if you use the stuff that I've shown you, you're not going to hurt anything. This is stuff where we're looking at reading or we're looking at monitoring, right? We're not doing active things in a system. If you are not familiar with PowerShell and you Google something and it looks awesome, maybe go find someone in your environment who is, you know, a dedicated Windows admin who's a little more, who can tell you, okay, this looks great, but when you do X, it is going to apply Y action to our systems. There are PowerShell scripts that you use to do actions on systems, right? So when I was setting up the Office 365, their mail security program where they do the outbound encryption setup, when you're setting that up, you actually set that up with PowerShell against, like online PowerShell against Microsoft Office 365 systems, right? So you actually have to run some PowerShell commands that enable that there. You're probably not going to hurt anything doing that, but again, you are actually using a PowerShell command to do a proactive action against the system. PowerShell is one of those things where you can use it to read, but you can also use it to write. So I would recommend starting with a few things like this. If you're getting into it, you're getting used to it, where you're just going to be reading information, or you're just looking to monitor something. If you're looking at anything where you kind of want to maybe proactively take it where, you know, XP turns into Y, or I want to use PowerShell to do this thing, and it looks like it may apply action, like I said, consult someone in your organization. If you go find, if you're not, you know, maybe you're not on the more technical wing, if you go find one of your dedicated Windows admins, most likely they're going to be able to look at it and kind of walk you through it. And if not, then I would highly recommend that everybody kind of, as an organization, maybe sit down and do some PowerShell classes. That TechNet gallery where they've got all those scripts, Microsoft also has a lot of good educational materials now around this stuff. I think they partnered with Linda, I think, and they produced a bunch of freely available classes now on a lot of the new PowerShell features. And they've got a few other free resources and classes that you can do online. So you might want to go and look at something like that too if you want to get more into it. Hey, bought Linda, there you go, yeah. See, that's the thing. Start a company, let someone else buy you. Retire rich. So. All right.
Nick, you've run across a couple of different items and things that we could look for. I mean, I'm sure there are a multitude of things that would help us make sure that our environments are secure in that. Is there like
there are a couple really good security tool repositories. Not that I can remember the address list off, like the address URL off the top of my head, but I could definitely send out something or put something out there for anybody who wants to go and get stuff. Secure lists. I can't remember the exact one. There are a couple that I've used. If you actually, okay, have you ever used Nmap? So if you go download, go search for Nmap, the network mapping utility. That is hosted by an organization. You'll find their site, and they have just a gazillion great tools there. I would highly recommend you go there. So just Google Nmap, go to the actual the official download page, and go get it from them. And they've got a ton of other stuff. There's, depending on what vendor you're working with, a lot of the vendors have neat free tools now for different things. Who is it? Psychotic that does the secret server, whatever the guys. They have a couple of fun tools that you can download for free. One of them will show you all of the passwords in your environment, like it'll query against your Active Directory, look at all your password hashes, and then tell you which ones haven't been changed recently, which ones are too short, how many duplicates you have in your environment. You can download that for free and kind of get that kind of report. They've got another one that'll query AD and tell you, how many XP machines are on your environment, things like that. There's just a ton of stuff out there. It really depends on what exactly you're trying to look for or do. Yes.
Sort of similar to that.
And that's another good point on that, is that, if I contract with a vendor like Checkpoint, right? They're here today, rough stuff. There you are. There you go. So if I contract with a vendor like Checkpoint, I can buy into their ecosystem. They've probably got a lot of things that work together or they can put together for me, to build me a one-size-fits-all solution. And if my budget is there, that's a great way to go. Open source, yeah, you are going to have to kind of pick and choose the best of everything. There's not a whole lot of stuff that ties together regularly. I will say one of the tools that does work fairly well with most things, Alien Vault produces a tool called OSSIM, or open source theme they have. It's a derivative of their closed source product. So you get some of the same features and you can tie it into other items because they've already built those connections for you. But a lot of this stuff, yeah, you are going to be kind of piecemealing. So yeah, decide in your organization whether you want to contract somebody and get that one size fits all or not. Personally what I like doing is combining the two, because the idea of defense in depth or layered security, right? Instead of just trusting one, right? I can pay for Checkpoint to come out and set me up everything, and maybe I've got a Checkpoint firewall and it seems like it's doing really well, but maybe I stand up an OSSIM VM in the background that just kind of monitors for things, for any extra activity that might have been missed, just in case, Generally speaking, though, if you've bought a tool, it's probably going to catch everything or more than the open source tool is going to catch. But, why not, right? It doesn't cost you anything. Anybody else? Okay. Well, like I said, unless you guys want me to run something or show you anything else, I think we're good.
Well, Nicholas, thanks a lot for coming and sharing your knowledge with us today, and really appreciate it. Good gift of appreciation.
Thank you very much.
A little token. I'll get you a gift card. I'll send it to you. It's like a Amazon card, so you'll get that in the email.
Thank you.
Hey, definitely have more food, so grab seconds, and you're welcome to come bring it back to your table and eat it now, or take it out the door with you, what have you. So, but we got lots of food. We want you to take it away, so help yourself.